my name is Russell Spatz. I'm an alcoholic, and it is a privilege to be here with you guys. Hi guys. I haven't found necessary to have a drink, nor have I had a drink since. You gotta add that thing. Nor have I had a drink, because you know the guy in Texas said I haven't found necessary to have a drink in 40 years, and his buddy said, well, I saw you were shit-faced last night. He says, yeah, but it wasn't necessary. But so I haven't found necessary to have a drink, nor have I had a drink since January 25th, 1981. So I'm in my 42nd year of sobriety. I came here when I was 31, and I'm 73 years old now, and I've raised over 4 children and got 8 grandchildren, and my sponsor said don't do any major things during the first year, so when I was 3 months sober, I got married. I didn't think it was a big deal. I may have made a mistake there. It's too late now, but so been married for 41 years and self-supporting through my own contributions most of the time, and it's great to be here. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my experience, Strength and Hope. Now, I've been doing step series, and I'm a lawyer by trade, and so I'm a paid bullshit artist. I do this for a living, so I've been doing this sort of like stuff ever since I was about 6 or 7 years sober, and I've had the privilege of speaking around different places and doing these step series. And when I used to do them, most of you guys know what I'm talking about. Those who've heard me or seen me before. I used to actually stick to the steps, step 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, I'd have 10 books and all bookmarked and everything. We'd go through a whole, like it was a college course or something. This is how you do the 4th step. And, I've been, anybody who knows me knows I'm intensely, the A is like a giant toolbox. There's a wrench to fit every nut that walks through the door. And we all go through phases, and it's like a great symphony. There are incredible guys that are good at drunkalogs, and I used to do a lot of drunkalogs, because when you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years sober, all you got is a drunkalog, a great drunkalog, and then a few years of talking about how crazy you are, because the first 10 years is basically you're discovering how the real nature of the disease, because the disease is not the drinking. Look, all I'm saying, I'm giving you my opinion based upon my life, based upon my experience in the program, and based upon my reading of the literature, which I'm into. And the literature, so if I say something, you can pretty much assume, but you don't have to assume, you can look for yourself that it's in the literature. Drinking alcohol is but a symptom of our disease. Our real disease centers in our minds, not our body. I was an alcoholic before I started drinking, during the drinking, and after the drinking. I drank alcohol because no woman, no car, no matter money, nothing in this world that I lusted after worked quite as well or quite as fast as just a few drinks. And if it worked for me today the way it worked for me when I was 17 and 18 years old, I'd still be drinking it. But alcohol stopped working for me, and the real sad part about my life is it stopped working for me about 10 years before I realized it was not working for me, and I hurt a lot of people and I hurt myself. So I don't drink it anymore. But once you stop drinking the alcohol, then you get to see what this disease is really all about. As it says in the book, by repeated humiliations over a period of time, you get a new perspective. Repeated humiliations are the final crushing of our self-sufficiencies. There are more than one first step in this deal. There's more than one surrender if you're going to do it right. And you may wind up like I wound up. Like Bill Wilson wound up at 23 years. It took him 23 years. And then he wrote about emotional sobriety. Me, 10 years. You get to that point, that invisible deal, where you're sober, you're doing everything you're supposed to do in AA, and you're not happy. And you're doing it by the numbers, like serving jail time. How you doing? I'm hanging in there. Oh, that sounds like rocketed into the 4th dimension of existence. And somewhere along the line, hope, and those people that you hear of all the time that stop going to meetings, start drinking, stop continuing, stop doing that, don't have the glue, the cement they talk about right before the 6th step, so they have a solid foundation. Those people, they drink after 5, 10, 15 years. They're not drinking because they crave alcohol. Craving of alcohol happens with the first step. When you're sober for 10, I say, well, that guy obviously hasn't taken the first step. Really? Really, a guy sober for 20 years, drinks, he hasn't taken the first step? I don't think so. I wish that was the truth. I wish I could say you take the first step and you'll never drink again. You know what I mean? That ain't the deal. Because the first step is about really realizing you're powerless over alcohol and your life is unmanageable. When do you realize you're powerless over sex and lust and cars and women and men and people? When do you realize that you really have to abandon yourself to God and they were serious? When do you realize God is everything or he is nothing? When do you realize that if you really want to get rid of the selfishness we must or it kills us, God makes that possible? You have to not only give your life over, like in the third step, which is the mere beginning in our spiritual kindergarten, but as they say in the big book, once you sincerely decide to take this deal, that happens around the sixth step if you're actually doing the sixth step. Once you sincerely try to do this deal, that means what that means is God will give you everything you need. And things will become remarkable. He'll give you everything you need if you stay close to him and perform his works well. And if you're going to stay close to him, you better have a real solid idea of who he is and what he is. Not one of these sort of flimsy ideas. Because sometimes I can tell you this, if you don't know who God is and understand who he is and what he wants you to be and what he has in store for you and what his work is, then when you're talking to God, you may actually be talking to yourself. You may actually be talking to remember, sometimes my understanding of who God is really the God who tells me things I want to hear. You know what I mean? And next thing you know, you're doing what they say. First of all, we had to quit playing God. Well, how does a guy with 10 years or 20 years play God? Is it possible? Is it possible to be at an AA meeting and hold hands and say the Lord's Prayer and say the Serenity Prayer and even say that you believe in God? Is it possible to be doing that and actually be playing God and not really making God the centerpiece of your life? Because they say we could be rocking in the fourth dimension of existence. We're experiencing much of heaven and we will know peace. And they say the great fact is this and nothing less than this, that God has become the centerpiece of our life, that we're convinced that he lives in our hearts and minds in a way which is indeed miraculous, doing for us what we can't do for ourselves. That's not me. That's not my opinion. That's our textbook. And I can tell you, the founders were really into the God thing. There's a reason why they said we encourage church membership. Most of us belong to those churches. You may not like me saying it, but you better tell them to take it out of the big book. And they said it because that's what they all did, except for one or two guys. That's what Bill Wilson did with Sam Shoemaker and Ed Dowling. That's what Dr. Bob did. As Dr. Bob said to Clarence, the brewmaster, when he first encountered him in the hospital, and he said, Clarence, the first question, what do you think about God? Clarence says, what does that have to do with it? And Dr. Bob said, everything. Everything. And as you go along, you find out that, the not drinking thing can come really fast and really happen for maybe a while. You can be not drinking. But the people that drink after long-term sobriety, they're drinking because they haven't handled the actual alcoholism. And you may spend 10, 20 years trying to understand what the consequences of alcoholics are. Unless and until an alcoholic accepts his alcoholism and all its consequences, his sobriety will be precarious, and of true happiness he'll find none at all. How would you like that? Unhappy sobriety. They talk about it in the big book. They say here and there, once in a while, a former drinker says, feel better, look better, I'm having a better time. We laugh at that kind of crap. We know he'll try the old game again because he's not happy with his sobriety. Soon he'll know loneliness is few do. I'll tell you what loneliness is few do. Loneliness is few do is when you've been sober 5 or 10 years and you're unhappy and you start drinking again. And then what are you going to do? You've tried AA and it hasn't worked for you because you've never really done AA. You've just joined the Not Drinking Club. You didn't join the Rockin' in the Fourth Dimension Club. You didn't join the club that's separated out from the Not Drinking Club. Nothing wrong with the Not Drinking Club. I was in it for many years. I was in it for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, the Not Drinking Club. Don't drink even if your ass falls off. Don't drink and go to meetings. The medallions, the whole bit, and the parties. I was in the Not Drinking Club. Nothing wrong with that. It's like it's a spiritual kindergarten. But then there comes along something called the sixth step, where you got to stop fooling around, stop being a dilettante. Not be one of the spectators, but you got to be down on the field. 50,000 people as spectators, there's like 18 guys on the field. You know, you got to do the real thing, and that's when you have to start becoming entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character so you can be closer to Him. What?
Outside.
Oh, outside.
Outside issue.
Yeah, I have that problem. I start speaking, the dogs start coming. I don't know. No, but that's what happens. The bottom line is that you start getting serious about this deal. You know, you start getting serious, and you stop with the not drinking, going to meetings, and all that stuff, and you start becoming entirely ready. And the book Alcoholics Anonymous defines that, and the 12 and 12 defines being entirely ready. You know what entirely ready means, according to the book? This is the book's definition. It says the man and woman who is entirely ready. This is the one that separates the men from the boys. This is the men, and this is the women, not the girls and the boys. The people that are entirely ready are those who are trying these things repeatedly so they can grow in the image and likeness of their Creator. And you know who isn't entirely ready? The people that don't like people talking about God. The people that roll their eyes when people talk about God. The people that say, well, if they talk about God where I came from, when I came in, I wouldn't be here. You want to know something? You wouldn't have been here, because between 1935 and 1939, unless you got on your knees and professed that you were going to turn everything over to God, they wouldn't let you in the meeting. Read Dr. Bob McGill. You definitely would not have been here, you know, because they were serious. And the bottom line is, you may think that sort of attitude is intolerant. And now we're kinder and we're easier, you're softer. But I can only tell you based upon my experience, and I'm not the guy who's longest time, but 41 years saying a small time. I can tell you my experience, that fellowship and that separation still exists. Maybe 1% of the people that come into AA stay sober for more than 20 years. And maybe not many after that have contented sobriety and been rocked off. Not many after that have lost all fear of people and of economic insecurity. You know, there's a big gap. You look at the meetings sometimes. The AA's been around for like 90 years. If everybody stayed sober in AA and was serious about this program, and like Bill Wilson was serious. This is how Bill Wilson was serious. They asked Bill Wilson, what do you think about people that are sober and don't go to meetings? He said, I have no use for them because they have no gratitude. How can somebody who's sober and has lost all selfishness not stick around to try to help other people and go off and say, I'm off to the races? You know, A's been around 90 years. If everybody stayed sober, this room should be packed with guys with 35, 40, 45, 50 years. Maybe you'll have one guy in here, two guys in here with 40 years, a couple of people with 30 years. Then there's this huge gap between over 30 and 20 years where everybody sort of disappears. Now, I've been around, everybody disappears. They sort of say things, well, I've been around AA for 30 years. I've been around AA for 20 years. Well, I was sober for 15 years, but now I'm back again. I got 6 months and stuff like that. How does that happen? Because the cement's not there. The glue's not there. They talk about right before the sixth step, where we check the mortar, whether it's built with sand or whether it's built with cement and it's solid. The foundation is solid. The arch through which we walk through for freedom is solid. These steps are tools that I do. You remember the movie, what is it, the movie Karate Kid?
Yep.
He says, wax on and wax off, wax on and he's doing wax on. These steps are like wax on, wax off. You do them over and over. You're turning your life over and over and over to God. You're praying to God. You're doing them over and over and over. You fake it until you make it, maybe, which I did, but eventually you're actually supposed to make it. You really are supposed to make it at some point. And once you make it and you're doing it over and over again, try doing it over and over again. Try hanging around with the guys that I hung around by the time I had 10 or 15 years because I wanted more. Where you go out to dinner with them, you know what I mean? And you go out to dinner with them, and before you start eating, he says, what are you doing? They say, well, I'm eating. We're in a Denny's. I'm eating. He says, no, we have to give thanks first. We got to pray about this. Sit down at a table with guys with 50 and 60 years, and all of a sudden they bow their head and they start praying for like 5 minutes. And you're looking around to see whether people are looking at you in Denny's or wherever you're eating. And you know why you're worried about what people are looking at you? Because you still have that fear of what other people think about you. And you know what the other people are thinking, by the way? I wish I could do that. I wish I could believe like that. Instead of living this crummy life with these crummy people in this crummy situation, I wish I could have faith like that. Faith that works in tough situations, even when you have cancer or whatever. And I'm sitting around looking, I'm worried because I'm worried about what some clown is thinking about me at an AA meeting who isn't even paying my Visa bill, you know what I mean? Because I am so caught up and worried about myself because I have that one consequence, you know, that consequence of being an alcoholic, and that is that incredible feeling of being unworthy to even being alive, and knowing that if everybody knew me the way I knew me, they'd think I was a piece of shit, because I know I'm a piece of shit, even though I'm sober, because I tell myself that all the time. I'm in the shower, I'm driving in my car, and all of a sudden I hear this voice, you're an asshole, you ought to kill yourself. It comes out of nowhere. I look around, who the hell's telling me that? I'm the only one in the car. I'm a loser, I'm an asshole, I'm a jerk, I'm an idiot. I'm a piece of crap, I ought to kill myself. Where's that voice coming from? You know what that voice is? That's the real committee. That's not the committee that you talk about in your brain with the 10,000 voices saying bad shit about yourself and other people that everybody has. Don't worry about that committee because you're invited to the meetings. The real committee is the executive committee that throws that shit up and tells you you're a piece of shit. That's the committee. That's who you actually think you are. Not the bullshit you put up front. Not the spending money you don't have to buy shit you don't need to impress people you don't like. Not the name droppers. Not the big shot. That's the real. You want to know who you really are? You ought to listen to what you think about yourself and what you say about yourself to yourself all the time. That's who you really are. I'm a loser. I'm an asshole. I don't deserve to live. I'll never be able to get this. Just listen to yourself. Then you'll know who you really are. Not the bullshit you put in front of other people. Then you'll know why you can't share openly at AA meetings. Why you can't talk, why you can't even be yourself. And I want to say something. If you could be yourself, you'd be incredible. Because you don't know how incredibly wonderful you are. Because he only made one of you. You want to know something? I used to have people hate me. They didn't even hate me. They just hated who I pretended to be. I'd run and he says, no, I know you think I'm this, but I'm really that. You know what I mean? At least I have people that hate me. They don't like my personality. That's okay. But at least they hate me. I mean, they're hating me. But you want to know something? My friends who like me, who love me, you want to know something? They love me. They don't love the guy that I'm trying to make believe I am. Because nobody does me better than me. You know? I mean, I'm just telling you. Ain't nobody can do me like me. You know, God made me to be me. And if I'm following his will, it's all going to be wonderful. I'm going to lose that fear of economic insecurity. I mean, what kind of sobriety do you want? You want a sobriety of faith and hope, or you want a sobriety of fear? You know, I mean, that's the deal. That's what this thing is all about. So I'm droning on, and I'm not even getting to the point where... So, listen, the point is, people ask me, I do what steps? I'm living the steps. And I'm not saying this just to be glib or anything like that. You do this thing for 30, 40 years, over and over again. You don't say, I used to say, oh, that was step 3. Oh, I just did a step 4. I wake up thinking about God. I go to a 6 a.m. meeting thinking about God, a 7 a.m. meeting thinking about God, a 12 o'clock meeting with people where they're talking about God. You know something? God says, you know what it says? It says, but we won't hang around you. This is a big book. He says, we cannot be sure. God will determine that, so your real reliance has to be on him. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. You know the fellowship I crave? The fellowship of believers. Do you want to know something? I'm going to tell you a little story. There is a fellowship of believers in AA. There are people that get together. I get together with them all the time. 12 o'clock, I'm with like 10 or 20 men. All we're doing is talking about God. You know why they joined churches back then? Why Bill Wilson said we encourage church membership. Imagine this. The founders say, we encourage you to join religious organizations. So you got two attitudes. You're either going to thoroughly do the things they do, even the extra credit. Because you're either going to do the extra... Let me tell you something. To get the things that most people in AA will never have, you got to be prepared to do the shit that most people will never do. So you can either say, I know they're just saying it's optional, but if they did it, I'm going to do it. They're encouraging it in the book. The reason they have it in the book is because that's what they did. Or you're going to say, well, I know the founders are encouraging it, but now I'll pass. I'll pass. Because you're a defiant, arrogant alcoholic who doesn't know how to follow directions and hasn't yet surrendered. And let me tell you something. I'll tell you something. Nobody gets away with anything around here. Where's my coffee?
Right here.
Okay.
It's the white.
Nobody gets away with anything around this deal. So the bottom line is that I woke up one day after going to Bible study because some guy told me you got to go to Bible study, start reading the source material. Because in Dr. Bob the good old times, they said the books they found absolutely essential were 1 Corinthians 13, Sermon on the Mount, and the book of James. So that's what I did. You don't have to do it. You do whatever you want to do. You know what I mean? Good orderly direction. Good enough for you. You know, you just figure out what your orderly direction is. Do the next right thing. You just do that deal. You know what I mean? You're so good at it. You know, I mean, you'll do fine. But I went to, you know, I just followed directions to the people. Let me tell you something. God will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. I've created the fellowship I crave. Every meeting I go to is filled with people. I don't have anybody in my meetings that are rolling their eyes and saying, well, they talk about God. None of that crap. You know? I come to meetings where that happens, where they're whining about, where they're thumbs up and crybabies, and we're worried about the car and all that crap they're worried about in the world and everything like that. They haven't experienced any of the promises, or if they have, they're fleeting like that and they go away. So I go to those meetings too. You know why I go to those meetings? Because the God of my understanding says I have to go to those meetings and I have to talk about my story. Bill Wilson said, the Lord has been so wonderful to me, curing me of this double disease, that I got to keep talking about it and telling other people. And that's the way I feel. You know, that's the work that he has me done. He says, go out there and you tell them about me and what's happened to your life, because it says we're on a new basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We never apologize for God to anybody in AA. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. Instead, we let them demonstrate what he has done for them in their lives, and at once they begin to outgrow fear. So I don't shy away from this stuff in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, when I walk out of an AA room, the only thing I think about is that I talk about God and what he's done for me. I don't think about whether some guy in the back row here doesn't like me because I talk too much about God. I don't worry about that stuff. You know what I mean? And if you're worried about that stuff, then you ought to think to yourself, why are you so scared about what other people think about you? And you got to decide. You've gone through your entire life. There's no youngsters in here. You guys are 40, 50, and 60 years old. You lived your entire flipping life worried about what other people think about you. You ought to really think about that and go home and vomit. You know, really, you ought to think about what it's like to live a life where you're scared to talk about anything or really delve into this stuff and making believe that you're emotionally sober. Because I met people in Alcoholics Anonymous like Al Kennedy, who had their shit together and he was dying of cancer and he was out there trying to help people and he'd never even mention it. You know why? Because he was one of those people that got robbed in the fourth dimension of existence. Yeah, they asked Mother Teresa why they followed her around. You know, they followed her around in the slums. Some guy from New York Times, while he was talking to all these people about God and everything like that, and he said to her one day, the reporter said to her, he says, I wouldn't do what you're doing for $1 million. She said, neither would I. She was doing it because she felt that's what God wanted her to do. People who believe in God, they stay sober for 40 years. They stay sober for 50 years. They carry a message of life, not a message of death. You know, not too many people. Okay, so I'm going to read a couple things to you, and then I'm going to talk about something. And it's going to be something to do with the fifth step, but, you know, because this is talk 5. But I'm not going to tell you how to do the fifth step. You can read the book. It tells you how to do it, who to pick out. I mean, I did it. I did the fourth step. I knew how to do the fifth step. I went to my psychiatrist because I liked the guy. His close amount of friend. I went to my psychiatrist. I read him the fourth step. He got out his old notes from me that he saw me 3 years ago. He said, that's funny. You didn't say anything about drinking back then. Doesn't matter. I told him the whole shit, you know, the whole thing. That was the fifth step is all these steps are basically telling you this is how you live your life from now on. You do it once, you do the fifth step once, and then you do it for the rest of your life. You do the fourth step once, then you do it forever. You do the third step once, and then you do it forever. You do the first step once, and then you do it forever. You understand what I'm saying? You do the sixth step once, and then you do it forever. There's no step that you stop. You continue to take personal inventory until you get it right. You understand? This is the new life. This is the way of life. AA is a way of life. It's different than the way of life I had before. Chasing women all around bar rooms and stuff like that. It's a different deal. Okay, so I'm in the, I've been around, you're around long enough, you get repeatedly beat up enough times, you start connecting dots. You see where the third step is connected to the sixth step, which is connected to the seventh. You see where these things are all connected. You know, they seem like that. What do they have to do with sobriety? What do they have to do with anything? And you know, you go through it, you know, it's like my sponsor said, when a man with experience meets a man with money, the man with experience will walk away with the money, and the man with the money will walk away with an experience. I mean, you've got to go through this stuff, you know, you've got to go through the pain and the agony and everything you go through, because that's what pushes you. You know, that's what the book of James says. That was one of the books they found absolutely essential. Rejoice when you go through trials of every time. Because if you go through the trials and you stick with God, you focus on Him, you will get through the trial and your faith will grow. And this is all about faith. And what does it say in 12 and 12? It says you can believe in God and have an earnest religious belief, and your faith remains barren because He's not the centerpiece of your life. And why would you make it the centerpiece of your life? Why would you even talk like this, like the way I'm talking about? You know why? Why would you do that? People will laugh at you. People will think you're stupid. People will talk about you behind your back. Isn't that what you hate as an alcoholic? Please love me. You want everybody to love you. Please don't reject me. Please tell me you like me. Please don't say bad things about me. What a crappy life. What a crappy life, you know? Unbelievable. You know? You know, if you really want to be honest with yourself, to think about all the things you never do, or you can never see yourself doing, and why? Because you live a life of fear. Man, can you imagine doing this thing for 20 years or 30 years and still living that kind of life? Okay, this is he sold himself short. This is the story, he sold himself short. I'm going to read you the last paragraph. Somebody read it the other day. I used to read this all the time when I was doing meetings, and then I stopped a few years ago. I stopped reading it. Somebody read the other day. I said, I got to read this thing. Last line. Last paragraph. Page 267, 4th edition. It's called, from the story, he sold himself short. I'm rated as a modestly successful man. I'm going to read this slow because I want you to digest it. I'm rated as a modestly successful man. This is this man's story. You know, it says, if you want we have and you only go to any length together, then you're ready to take certain steps. I don't know who your we is. You can develop a we in here. If you want what we have and are ready to go, willing to go to any length to get, then you're ready to take certain. You're not even ready to take. If you develop a we. I don't know who your we is. I don't even know whether you have a we. I don't even know whether you want what we have, whoever we is. You may just want what you used to have, the big house or the husband, whatever it is. But I developed a we, and my we were guys like this. My we were guys like this. Is my we. You see this guy? Bill Wilson was my way. Dr. Bob was my way. This guy, you know, Dr. Bob was my way. You know, Dr. Bob, the guy who said in the last paragraph, if you're an atheist, an agnostic, or have some sort of intellectual pride which keeps you from accepting what we're saying here, I feel sorry for you. Your Heavenly Father will never let you down. He's part of my we. Bill Wilson was part of my we. This guy is part of my we. I wanted what he had. I was willing to go to any length to get it. I didn't want just mere physical sobriety. I wanted this. I'm rated as a modestly successful man. My stock of material goods isn't great, but I have a fortune in friendships, courage, self-assurance, and an honest appraisal of my own abilities. Above all, get this, above all, I have gained the greatest thing according to any man. What do you think that is? What do you think the greatest thing is? The love and understanding of a gracious God.
Amen.
You go to meetings where they don't even like you talking about God. You can stand up and say you're an atheist, and they'll pat you on the back and they'll say, you know, they'll be tolerant. You can say you're an agnostic, they'll be tolerant. When the big book says this sort of thing has to be abandoned, they can say things and shout things that are completely against the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and nobody will say a word. And you know why nobody will say a word? Because they're scared that the person might not like them. Man, you guys ought to go to Al-Anon. It deals with codependency. You know what I mean? Why don't they stand up and say, listen, pal, this is the deal. You want to be an atheist agnostic, that's fine. Don't talk about it in an AA meeting. You want to know something? Because that's not what's in our big book. We're about something else. But nobody's going to say that because they're all chicken shit. But if you say the God thing, they'll come up to you and tell you you're killing fucking newcomers. You're murdering newcomers if you talk about God. Jesus. Man, it ain't well People's Anonymous, I can tell you that. Above all, I have gained the greatest thing according to any man, the love and understanding of a gracious God, who has lifted me from the alcoholic scrap heap to a position of trust, where I've been able to reap the rich rewards that come from showing a little love for others and from serving them as I can. After I saw that psychiatrist and did my fifth step, probably the worst fifth step in the world, but it was the best one I could do that day. There's a lot of reasons why you do fifth, so many reasons you do a fifth step. I couldn't do a fifth step before the fourth step because I didn't have anything to share that made any sense, because I'm an alcoholic, I'm delusional. I can't separate the truth from the false. My alcoholic life seems the only normal one. I think I'm right and I'm wrong. I think I'm selfless and I'm selfish. I have no idea. I do a fourth step, I have some inkling. At least I run it by somebody else. You know, I run it by somebody else and they give me a new way of looking at things, you know. Sometimes they use love. Sometimes my sponsors and the people I talk to were loving. Sometimes they were whatever the opposite of loving is, but sometimes they were tough. Sometimes they were sarcastic. Alcoholics, I don't know about you, but I'm one of these alcoholics that I thrive on sarcasm. You know, I asked some guy once who was an AA hero of mine whether he'd give me his number, and he said it's unlisted, just look it up in the book. And I said to him, your number is unlisted? And I had 3 years. I said, your number's unlisted? And he looked at me, and he could have said, yes, it's unlisted. That's not what he said to me. He said this, he said, Russell, I don't know what fellowship you're in, but I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm available. He had to give me the shot. He had to give me the shot. I don't know what fellowship you're in, but I'm in. You know what happened when he gave me that shot? Because I'm an alcoholic. I don't pay attention to anybody or anything unless it makes some sort of dent in my soul. And sometimes that dent has to be pain. You know what happened when my hero told me, I don't know what fellowship you're in, but I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm available. That's a story that was told me when I had 3 years. Never forgotten that story. I share it all the time. Somebody asked me to chair, I say I'm available. Changed my entire life because he gave me a shot. He loved me enough so that he wasn't worried about what I thought about him. He was more worried about my soul. He was more worried about me getting the right message than what I thought about him. So he didn't care. He just gave it to me straight. And I'm the kind of guy that I need that. Because I'm an arrogant son of a bitch. And I think I'm a know-it-all. And I think I know everything. So I need that kind of deal. That's the way. That doesn't mean you need it. You know? And the whole problem with the fifth step deal is the false pride. I was having a debate with somebody in the car. We were talking about somewhere there's such a thing as real pride. Actual pride. Good pride. I'm not sure there is. I'm not sure there is. I mean, I read scripture, I read stuff, I'm not even sure what there is about good pride. Because every person I've known that is a hero of mine in Alcoholics Anonymous, they never say things, I'm proud of my 40 years, I'm proud of my 50 years. They say, I've got 40 years sobriety because of the grace of God. They give all credit to God. If somebody even says, I want to introduce this guy, and he's a good speaker, or he's this, that, and the other thing, blah, 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 my compulsion, and most people I know say, I appreciate everything you've said to me, but I tell you something, I don't take credit for it, I point to him. Because he's the centerpiece of my life. Because that's what the big book says. Your life will be barren if he's not the centerpiece of your life. And false pride is the problem. The false pride is that's the thing that keeps me in the secrets. So, story time. I don't know how many of you guys are TikTok addicts like I am. You know, the story time, you know. True story. Because I do believe what the big book says. If you're going to talk about this stuff, you got to put some of your own flesh in the game. You got to tell a little story on yourself. So, I told you already I'm an attorney. So one day I was about, how maybe, I don't know, 10, 12 years sober, something like that. I had my own law office at that time. And I started off as a division chief of the state's attorney's office as a prosecutor. I had my own office. And this guy walks into my office, true story, named John, a young kid, 21 years old, and with his wife and his little baby. And he just got arrested in Fort Lauderdale for sale and delivery of a kilo of cocaine. Now, you got to understand something. Back then and even now, if you're caught with anything like 400 grams of cocaine, it's a 15-year minimum mandatory sentence. You understand? 15 years, no gain time, you go to jail, hand-to-hand sale, 2 narcs, up in Fort Lauderdale, no defense. I mean, unless Jesus is defending you, and he didn't even do good in his first trial. You understand what I'm saying? Unless something miracle happens, you're going away. And this falls before the worst judge in Fort Lauderdale, Dan Fudge. Let me give you an idea of who Dan Fudge was. On his desk, he had an electric chair that lit up. You know what I mean? But the guy offered me a lot of money. I mean, this is what I do for a living. This is the stuff I do for a living. I mean, if you're not going to be a serious litigator, so he offered me a bunch of money. At least at that time, for me, it was a lot of money. And he said one of these things: I have faith in you. I know you're going to get me off. I said, well, let me talk about the case. And he goes, no, you just do it. I have faith in you. I know you're going to get me off. And then he introduced me to his parents. His father was a professor up in Massachusetts. Mother, nice people. Thank you very much, Mr. Spatz. We know you're going to do a great job, blah, blah. We have full faith in you. Thank you very much. And then they leave, go back up to Massachusetts. And I'm sitting here with this case where there's 4 agents, opens on videotape or something, and it's hand-to-hand sale of a kilo around the table and everything like that. And I'm saying, and all they're saying to me is, I know you're going to get me off. And all I'm thinking is, there ain't no way I'm getting this guy off. This guy's going away for 15 years to 30 years. And they're going to hate me. They're going to report me to the bar. It's going to be in the newspaper. Russell Spatz, phony attorney. You know what I mean? Never go to him. He's a liar and he's a piece of crap. And all I'm doing is, and now you got to understand, some of these cases, they take like 6, 7 months. Every day for 6 months, I'm thinking about, what am I going to do about this case? What am I going to do about this? I mean, imagine that. I don't know what you guys worry about. I don't know what you guys, when you're sober, have ever had anxiety. By the way, that's the same thing as fear. Just in case one guy was in my office once talking about how he's worried. He says, oh, that's fear. No, I'm just worried. Fear. It's fear, okay? This is like real fear of being exposed, people being mad at you, stuff happening. You've probably had that in your life, maybe something. But this is the kind of thing that happens in the open, in front of people. You understand what I'm saying? In a courtroom, with clients, that it's serious stuff, and we all have different types of fears. And I could not, I woke up thinking about this. I went to sleep thinking about this. And all between that, I was worried about this. It colored my entire sobriety for 8 months. And I couldn't tell anybody. I got to tell my sponsor, who was a used car salesman. I'm going to tell my sponsor, this story, like, how's he going to help me? I'm a dead chicken. I took the money. I'm going to tell my group. I'm going to tell my group that I don't know how to handle this case. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to tell my group. You mean the group that I'm doing the steps on that night? You mean I'm going to tell that group that I want to kill myself? Because I'm not going to tell them. I'm going to call up one of my lawyer friends. I'm going to tell them I'm an incompetent piece of crap and I'm scared. I'm going to call up a lawyer. I'm going to call up a lawyer I know, another division chief or something like that, and say, listen, I got this case. I'm sort of scared. Hey, what? Who the hell am I? I know. I'll just tell me. I'll just talk to myself about this thing, You ever do that? It doesn't work real well. So one day, my sponsor says, you ought to go to this seminar. God is a miracle worker. Go to this seminar. That's a retreat, an AA retreat. And it was run by a guy named Father Al Grau, who's dead. He's passed away. Bless his soul. And just a wonderful guy, Al Grau. Al Grau, let me tell you about Al Grau. He had 55 years sobriety. He was like 78 years old or 80 years old. He was a Jesuit priest. Those Jesuits are pretty high up the ladder. And he was a PhD in psychology. And he ran the Palm Beach Institute for Drug Addiction, okay? So you got a priest, Jesuit priest, Palm Beach Institute, alcoholic, 55 years, and he's running the retreat. So I looked at this guy and I said, that's the guy. That's the guy I can tell this shit to. I can tell this guy. I've been trying to take this shit for 8 months, and I had nobody to talk to. I am telling this guy this stuff, okay? So we go through the whole retreat. I don't know how many people been to a retreat. At the end of the retreat, you can make an appointment to see the retreat master. So I make an appointment to see, oh, by the way, I didn't tell you this, he was a war hero, certified war hero. In the Bataan March, you know, and whatever the 1,000-man march was, where people died, he was in that march with the Japanese and everything. Guy was like everything, you know? So this is the guy. I'm finally, and he's got his direct linkage to God. I mean, this is no, I'm going to tell him. So oh Lord, I love this story because it's so true. True ones are the best ones. So I make an appointment to see him. So I walk in to see him, and he says, I introduce myself, and I say, well, thank you, Father, and I'm not Catholic, you know, but, you know, I said, so he says, what's the problem? So I tell him the story. I represent this guy, took money, and didn't steal the cocaine, blah, blah, blah. And I start telling him the story, and he goes like this. He says, no. He says, I'm not the guy. And I say, no, you're the guy. He says, no, I am not the guy to hear this story. I said, no, Father, you are the guy. I am not the guy. No, you are the guy. So now I'm having an argument with this guy as to whether or not he's even going to hear me. But he's going to hear me. There's going to be a dead priest. He's going to hear me. So he finally says, okay, tell me. So I tell him the whole story. And I don't know what to do, and what are they going to think about me if I lose, and blah, 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 what's going to happen in my life. And then I finished the story, and I said, so what do you think? And he looks at me and says, you want to know what I think? I said, yeah, I want to know what you think. He says, I said, I'll tell you what I think. I think that you are full of shit. And then he spent 20 minutes telling me why I was full of shit. In the way a Jesuit priest, AA guy, who was steeped in the truth and knew the deal, could actually tell you stuff about yourself that you didn't see. And he told me the truth, you know. This guy goes to jail. He's going to jail because he sold cocaine. It has nothing to do with you. You know, why does this have to do with you? It has to do with him. And he went through a whole, he had it check. So and then he did, after he beat the shit out of me, he then did one of these things, now go in peace, my son. Holy shit, you know, it's a Catholic thing, you know. So I walk out the door, and I'm like in shell shock. I go to tell this guy, pour my heart out of something that's bothering me, and he's telling me I'm full of shit, which I know. Now, I'm not Roman Catholic, but I know I've seen enough movies with confessions. You're supposed to say 3 Hail Marys or some sort of bullshit like that, you know. But I know I've never heard the priest say, you're full of shit, you know what I mean? I know, so I'm figuring I'm writing the Pope. I'm writing his superior. You got to defrock this guy or do something. I'm going through the alcohol thing with the 15 boys in my brain. You know, let's kill him, let's lynch him. Who the hell is he, and what's he doing? And I get into my little room in the retreat, and it's like one bed, you know what I mean? A little desk, you know, with the Bible on it, and a cross over the bed, and a little wooden cross, you know. And I sit down in the bed. I'm saying, he said this, and I said that, and he said this, and I said that, and I should have said this, and I start twisting, you know. And then all of a sudden, in a split second, all of a sudden this voice goes across my brain. You know what the voice says? It says, maybe he's right. And the next voice I heard was, he is right. And I thought, I heard, I said, he is right. Everything he said is right. And something that had been bothering me, a defect of character that I had, which had to do about worrying about what people thought about me, had to do with that worrying about what people thought about me, or what they're going to think about me, that I had all my life that I didn't even know I had, disappeared like that. My 8 months, gone. Never to come back again. Maybe once in a while here and there, minor, never to come up back again. Do you know what it's like to be able to handle, I'll tell you one thing, my whole attitude changed about how I dealt with people. Guy says to me, so what do you think is going to happen? I said, I think you're going to go away for life. He said, go away for life? I said, it's a possibility. He says, we'll work on it. I'll do the best I can. There's always a possibility, but I don't sugarcoat it. I don't do it down. He says, well, yeah, I don't want to know everything. I trust you. I don't give a crap whether you trust me. You better learn your case and know what's going on. Okay? Because I can tell you, based upon what I see and the evidence right here, chances are you're going away for a long time. And you are going to have to work on it. I don't accept that crap. I don't accept that bullshit. You know, I trust you. I know everything's going to be okay. I don't know. You want something? You know everything's going to be okay? I've been practicing for 40 years. I don't know everything's going to be okay. As a matter of fact, from where I'm sitting, everything's going to be horrible. You understand what I'm saying? It ain't going to be okay. You understand what I'm saying? You and I are going to have to work hard on this deal. I don't accept that baloney. You understand? I don't expect that sort of like addict, alcoholic, fairy tale bullshit. You know what I mean? Don't lay that crap on me. I don't accept it. They don't want to pay everybody. They will walk out and find a lawyer that tells them bullshit. Fine, God bless you. Don't let the door hit you in the ass, okay? But the guys who stay become real good clients and they understand what's going on and there's never any problem. Oh, by the way, in that case, I won the case. The jury found him guilty of attempted trafficking cocaine, which wasn't a crime at the time. Went up to the 4th District Court of Appeal and they reversed the whole thing. He did 2 days in jail. God is great. If you believe in him, he will prove himself to you over your lifetime. He will prove himself to you. Things that are impossible will become possible. And where you'll have to sit there and say, this can only be a God thing. He put that priest in my life. Things that you think is the worst thing becomes the best thing. Becomes a story. Becomes a story, for God's sake. That thing becomes a story. Sometimes you'll meet people in your life and you'll hate their guts. They come up to me and say, I used to hate you, but now I love you. You'll hate their guts because they're telling you the exact thing you need to hear, although you don't realize it at the time. You got to go through a little more pain. And sometimes there's a time to be sweet and a time to be nice, and there's a time to use tough love. There's a time to be sarcastic. I said to Ray O'Keefe, once I said I was 10 years sober, I was broke again. Not because I don't make money, I was broke again because apparently, I learned this in 10 years, and I was a math major, going for my PhD in algebraic topology. I'm passing this along to you just in case you don't know. Because I couldn't understand why I was broke again, and he said, when you spend more money than you make, you go into something called debt. You guys are laughing because you probably know this. But I was 10 years sober and I didn't know that. I just kept on spending like a drunken sailor, buying stuff, make myself feel better and stuff like that. And I said, when am I going to lose economic insecurity? Because I believe I was working this thing hard for 10 years. I didn't understand why I wasn't a millionaire. And he said, who told you? He says, when am I going to make money and be a millionaire? He said, who told you that was going to happen? I said, the book. It says, lose fear of people and economic insecurity. He says, when am I going to get economic security? He says, what are you talking about? I said, the book. He says, the book doesn't say that. I said, it does. He said, read it to me. I said, you will lose fear of people and of economic insecurity. He says, yes, Russell. You'll lose the fear. He says, you, unfortunately, will always be broke. It just won't bother you. Thanks, I appreciate that. It's stuff like the truth. But you can't get the truth. You can't get the truth from other people. You'll never get the truth from yourself. Yourself will never tell you the truth. You'll always be lying to yourself. You get the truth from putting yourself in front of other people and submitting to them. And having some little bit of an idea, submitting to them, and opening yourself up, even to the possibility, whether you want to call it a fifth step or continued fifth step, or even when you realize there's a possibility, they might tell you you're full of shit. They might tell you you're full of shit. I mean, if you're going up to somebody and you're going to open yourself up, and then you're going to have to listen, don't open yourself up. I'll say to people, I said, well, why don't you just tell me, you're going to tell me something, but you don't want to know the truth. And then we can start off that way, you know what I mean? Knowing that you might get hurt, you might be told something, but maybe you'll learn something and something will be fixed. That's all about the false pride that we all have. I still have it today. You still have to watch out for it. That deal where you know you have something bothered with you, but you don't, it's not bad enough. It's bad enough to keep you feeling not good about yourself, but not bad enough where you'll actually tell somebody else, this is what's going on with me, because you're so worried about what they're going to think about you. So it keeps you sick. It keeps you sick inside. And that's the false pride that all alcoholics have. And that's the real, not the drinking, that's the real alcoholism, which will keep you in everlasting ignorance because you can't really share what's going on. I mean, the fourth step at least tells you, the inventory steps where it gives you some idea of what you know what's going on. But the fact that you can't even then share it with somebody else, and you want something, I'm not so sure it doesn't get worse over a period of time once you get like 10, 20, 40 years, you know, I mean, you figure you can fix it all yourself, you know what I mean? Luckily, I hang around with a lot of people that are, you know, in this fellowship and everything like that, where most of the shit comes out at lunch, you know? I mean, this is because this becomes a way of life. Talking, instead of talking bullshit, we don't say, well, hey, how'd you like them Dolphins? You know, hey, did you watch that golf game? You know, hey, look at that good-looking blonde. We don't talk about stuff like that. We talk about problems and what we're going through and stuff like that, because when you're into the fifth step and you're doing that stuff, that's how you talk. That's the kind of relationships we have with people. The same relationship you have with God. You're open with them. You try to be as open as possible. They're either talking to you, you're talking to them. They're relationships where they nourish you. They build you up. They're balcony people. They build you up. And so you don't have time to let the whole thing build up until you drink again or you drug again and feel crappy about your life. You get it? Yeah. Make any sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you.
That's it.